Thank you so much, Mayor Benjamin, for that introduction and for being a brother in the struggle and certainly leading the way for American cities. A pleasant good afternoon to each and every one, to our panelists. Thank you for lending your expertise to this very valuable conversation we're going to have today about smart cities and you. The future is here. Don't get left behind. I want to welcome everyone to the 47th Annual Legislative Conference of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. As has been stated, I am Congresswoman Yvette Clark, and I proudly represent New York's 9th Congressional District. For those of you who know, that's Brooklyn. I'm delighted that you've joined us for what I hope is one of your last yet stimulating panels during this conference. We have a dynamic panel of leading subject matter experts from utilities to technology to telecom and transportation industries to help us understand, dissect, and really delve into the role technology is playing in our cities and in our nation across the board. This topic is especially important to me as a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, the Committee on Small Business. Since the birth of the internet, technology is shaping our daily lives and changing the way we do basic activities. Today's panelists will share how we should embrace these new technologies in our cities and how technology will create more opportunities within our communities. And today, we will start this conversation with very special remarks from one of the foremost experts in the domestic and international energy sectors, and that's none other than the Honorable Commissioner Colette D. Honorable. What a lovely name. She served as Commissioner at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, known as FERC, under President Barack Obama. During her tenure at FERC, she focused on reliability oversight of the bulk power system, transmission, planning, oversight of wholesale markets, renewable integrations, and so much more. She focused on everything related to regulating America's energy sources. And prior to FERC, the Commissioner, after serving as chairwoman of the Arkansas Public Service Commission, she's no stranger to working for the betterment of the people and wants to ensure everyone has enough affordable energy resources. So I'm so happy she has joined us here today to open this very important panel on how we can prepare for the next energy revolution. And you know, it's critical that we are having this conversation during a time where so much of our nation has been hit with these storms. Yes. Because energy resiliency is going to be so crucial as we look at the 21st century, the frequency of storms and other hazardous conditions that can really set nations back. And I think that we really need to keep an eye, quite frankly, on the territories of the United States and the Caribbean region, because it's said that when a nation loses power for 9 days or more, the regression of the civil society accompanies it significantly. And so we all are going to have to keep these nations in our prayer and also bring our expertise to bear in rebuilding a lot of the energy grids of the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. It's going to be really, really critical. And I hope that I get to see some CBC faces in the spaces where that work is being done, if you get what I mean. Did you receive the thought beat? Yes. Just want to make sure. Without further ado, it is my honor and it is my privilege to present to you the Honorable Commissioner Colette D. Honorable. Let's give her a hand.
Good afternoon. I am delighted to join Congresswoman Clark's panel this afternoon, and I have to pause if I might. to acknowledge her tremendous work. And if you don't know her work, I urge you, even while you're sitting here, to Google her, to see what a leader she is. Yes, she hails from Brooklyn, New York. And we met, I don't know if you recall this, Congresswoman, in Tunica, Mississippi.
Yes.
The Congresswoman was leading a panel on energy.
Yes.
And it was some years ago, but I've been consistently involved with the Congressional Black Caucus, the Foundation. Congresswoman Clark and her role in energy and commerce is pivotal. And she is bringing to bear a number of experts, her expertise, and bringing together a number of significant energy issues, making sure we understand how these issues impact us, and also making sure we are part of the conversation, particularly as it relates to energy, to telecommunications and the intersection of that, and more broadly, the interdependencies among a number of key areas in the energy and telecommunications sectors. So you have to know what an amazing woman she is, not only for New York, but all of us across the country. Thank you, Congresswoman. So to set the stage for our conversation this afternoon, we in this country, and dare I might say around the world, we are at a crossroads. And to pick up right where the Congresswoman left off, if you do not believe that climate change is real, look at the news. Look on your phone at CNN, BBC, around the world. Temperatures are rising at rates never before seen. We are seeing 800-year rainfalls and flooding, earthquakes, hurricanes that we've never before seen on Earth. Now, some of you say it's the end of times. But to the Congresswoman's point, we must be focused on what does this mean for energy? Why? And why is that relevant to us as a people? This is an important discussion, and not only a discussion, but an effort we must all undertake, because energy affects every single thing that we do. If you look at the newspaper on any day of the week around the world, I promise you, you will find an article on energy. And to the Congresswoman's point, it's energy that's affecting economies, that is driving economies, and so it's imperative that we stand up these critical infrastructures around the U.S. and in the U.S. territories, particularly, for instance, in Puerto Rico, where there is no electricity. That means there are no businesses operating, there are no hospitals operating, there are no homes functioning, and there are no schools functioning. So that grinds your economy to a halt. Now think about that replicated time and time again. You pick the disaster. Or it could be cybersecurity or a severe threat to the grid. So we have a lot of work to do, and I say that we are at a crossroads today because the culmination of all of these challenges make for the perfect time for our attention to be turned to this important issue, and I'm delighted to join this effort, and I certainly want to acknowledge Mayor Benjamin for all of his work and leadership thus far. So to further provide a little background, if you'll recall, the Paris talks and the Paris Agreement, and I'm so proud of the work of President Barack Obama and his efforts not only to lead climate action plan changes in the U.S., but to really be a leader around the globe. And he was the man, along with others, who led in the way of ensuring that we focus on the environment and our planet for future generations, and being responsible for the resources that we have and using them efficiently. So this Paris Agreement, adopted on December 12, 2015, at the 21st Conference of the Parties of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, focused on a commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions around the world. That included the U.S. until very recently, unfortunately, when this administration signaled that the U.S. would no longer be a part of the Paris Agreement. I took it to heart, especially because I participated in a number of the talks leading up to the Paris Agreement, including participation in the second high-level plenary of countries around the world. We went to Paris to defend our country's climate goals. And so I presented the U.S. plan that was drafted by the EPA and was questioned, how are you going to achieve those goals? And I proudly said, because of the ways in which we are working so well together in this country, industry, regulators, consumer groups, a number of stakeholders focused together on appreciating the diversity of our resources, but also integrating energy efficiency, demand response, innovative technologies such as energy storage, and yes, telecommunications too. So I'm very proud and defended that point. But more importantly, the people around this country said, we will not withdraw from the Paris Agreement. And so to bring this point closer to home, and I certainly have to mention the Congresswoman's state of New York, which is leading the way along with a number of others. In June of 2017, former mayor of New York, Mayor Bloomberg, announced his initiative to create a $200 million philanthropic program aimed at backing incentive policies at the city level. This is important, and you will hear why today. This is crucial for our country's leadership on this issue. The mayor certainly put forward a challenge allowing people to compete for $5 million grand prizes, an additional $1 million implementation grants from the Bloomberg Philanthropies to help execute this work. You've got to have the dollars to fund this important work. NYPA, the New York Power Authority, is another leader I want to highlight here, given the fact that the Congresswoman is from New York, and you should know how they are leading on the smart cities movement. And they're at the forefront of a number of sweeping energy, environmental, and economic development initiatives spearheaded by Governor Cuomo. Yes, if you look across the country far to the other side, certainly governors in California and around the world are leading. But something I want to further highlight is what is happening at the local level. And this is why you are important and where you can help lead and say what we will and won't do as a people and as a nation. Certainly locally, there is an initiative called We Are Still in which more than 2,300 leaders from America's city halls, state houses, boardrooms, and college campuses representing more than 127 Americans. That includes all of us. And 6.2 trillion of the U.S. economy have signed on to the We Are Still In Declaration. Now, the We Are Still In Declaration also includes a number of major industries such as Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, as well as industries that are global in nature, as these others are, Nike, Target, Timberland, I know some of you have some, and a number of health companies and tech companies around the country and around the globe. This is significant and an unprecedented effort that is truly grassroots, but let us not stop there. There is a very powerful group called Climate Mayors, in which these mayors of various cities around the country have said, we too are still in. And we don't care what any administration says, we will lead, and we will lead well. There are 379 climate mayors around the country, and these positions are quite powerful, as you know, and direct a number of very significant local economy, health-related and energy-related matters for their constituencies, representing 67.8 million Americans. And it's certainly an honor to acknowledge and to recognize Mayor Benjamin of Columbia, South Carolina, for his membership and his leadership on this issue. And to bring it home, right here in the District of Columbia, there is an interagency effort underway, and I certainly want to acknowledge Mayor Bowser, to explore how smart city technology can be used in the district. Taking this all together, what does this mean for you? The time is now. So either we are going to get on this train, or we will be left behind. And I'm on the train. And I'm proudly on it, not only in the District of Columbia, yes, even from the great state of Arkansas, but around this country and around the globe, because we have very important work to do. So I look forward to this distinguished panel. I look forward to engaging in the dialogue with you. I certainly want to acknowledge someone here with me who helped me pull together this information today, Justin Mirabal, a new associate with Reed Smith, which is where I landed after I completed my service at the administration. administration. Congresswoman, thank you for your leadership in this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you for continuing to lead, even as you return to the private sector life.
Thank you.
This is exciting, and we're going to obviously have some informal statements and some prepared questions we have for the panelists. But we want to make sure we leave ample time for some types of questions, because this is what this is about. How we learn as much as we can about what a smart city is, exactly how it's going to shape our future. Many of you may know, but 85% of all the people who live in this country live in cities and metropolitan economies. 87% of America's gross domestic product, $19 trillion GDP in cities and metropolitan economies. So what does it mean? Smart cities, is it a buzzword, or are there huge opportunities out there? So again, Congresswoman, thank you so much for convening us on this very important topic, as you have in the past as well. Came and hosted our African American Mayors Association, and that was I and John. So we just appreciate your leadership there. Transforming our communities to smart cities is going to bring many benefits. Innovative technology, more jobs, less pollution, obviously more energy efficiency, and certainly having these experts and leaders in their fields here with us today is an exciting opportunity. We're going to go down the panel here, and obviously we're joined by David Albritton, who's Executive Director of Global Product Development Communications at General Motors. Sylla-Dixon, Vice President of Federal Government and External Affairs at T-Mobile. David Owens, the EVP of the Edison Electric Institute. Spencer Overton, the President of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. And Derron Parks, Senior Manager and Counsel for Government Relations at Samsung Electronics America, and Senator Kevin Parker, New York State Senator representing the 21st District of New York. We're going to start on the far end with David, and come on down to Spencer, and we'll stop somewhere along the way at the roads between all those thorns, and have some questions from Marie as well. Before we can start with the questions, would you please introduce yourselves, the organization, your company that you represent, and then give us maybe your definition of smart cities, followed by what smart cities might mean to your industry or organization.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Albritton. It's a pleasure to be here. Councilwoman Clark, thank you for the invitation. I represent General Motors. We're a 100-year-old company, the largest OEM manufacturer and original equipment manufacturer, 10 million cars a year, 4 million of which are sold here in the United States, a lot of cars. But our industry, our entire industry, is being disrupted daily by technology and connectivity. If you think about your car, it's the second largest purchase that you probably make in your life behind your house. Yet your car sits in your driveway or in the parking lot 95% of the time. So it's a wasted asset. You drive to work, you drive to the store. Other than that, it's just there. So the usage model for vehicles is changing dramatically, particularly as it relates to technology. And if you think about this, as more people are moving to urban centers, more and more people, particularly millennials, are not buying vehicles, right? Because of parking and congestion and pollution and all kinds of reasons. Yet, they have distinct needs to get from point A to point B. If you're in a city like New York City or Philadelphia, where I grew up, and you have access to subways and elevated trains and trolleys and buses, and you can get there to any part of the city that you want to, that's a very easy solution. But in other cities, such as the city I work in Detroit, the infrastructure is not as robust. And so those people who don't live near a bus line or a trolley line have tremendous problems with transportation needs. So if you think about the needs of a future smart city, it's going to have to address the needs of those people who actually need transportation, yet don't have access to it. So how can we leverage this technology so that we can bring that forward to them? And you have to think about solutions such as their first mile, last mile solution. So if you live a mile away from the trolley that you have to take to the doctor's office, and you are, have an injured foot, how do you get to that place? So if you think about what's happening today with the advent of the internet, let's look at things like Lyft and Uber, ride-sharing services that you can use with your phone, right? That's a connected service that you can call up, have a car can pick you up and take you anywhere you need to go for a nominal price. That is a dramatic change. If you think about the internet 20 years ago, and what it created in all kinds of industries, you think about the Facebooks and the Amazons and those types of things, I can tell you in our industry, that's the change that we're expecting that's going to happen. A car is just going to be another node in the network, and it's going to be an extension of your connectivity, and that's the future for automotive.
Thank you, David. General Motors and the Entertainment Software Association have some virtual reality headsets in the background. Kevin and Leah, you guys had them on earlier. Hold them up again. It was walking like Cyclops. But then after we're done, I would encourage you all to go try some of them out and see what the future looks like. I can hear everyone pretty well, but obviously we're competing with some others for some sound, so as the speakers, pull the microphones as close to you as possible. Politicians don't usually like hot mics, but we need hot mics right now. Please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Is it on?
It's on. How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. That deep baritone voice. Anyway, I'm David Owens, and I'm pleased to be here to talk with you about smart cities. I'm with Edison Electric Institute. Actually, I retired in June, but you wouldn't believe it. And Edison Electric Institute is an international trade association. And so the members of Edison Electric Institute serve 220 million customers throughout the United States, many overseas as well. In fact, we're helping with the mutual assistance programs from the hurricanes and even the Caribbean and so forth. So let me give you at least my concept of a smart city. And I think it's very, very simplistic. We live in a digitized society. So what smart communities and smart cities are is the use of data and technology to help drive efficiencies, to sustain a reduction in global warming, to spur economic development, and to improve people's lives. I look at various components, and my friend David just spoke to one of those components, smart transportation. One way of dealing with smart transportation is electrification, electric vehicles, electric charging stations. So a smart city would have charging stations. Another thing would be smart lighting, where you would have LED lighting, and the lighting would have sensors, and it would make parking lots, it would make communities much safer. Smart traffic lights. Again, this is all built upon digitization, the integration of digital technologies, and the use of data. Smart buildings. Smart building would have smart lights, would have smart windows, would have energy efficiency devices, would have combined power. Distributed energy resources. There are a lot of those. Rooftop solar, wind technologies, energy storage, electric vehicles, all of those are distributed technologies. So all of this is made possible by the use of data and intelligent sensors. So that's what a smart city is. It provides economic development, it improves the environment, it spurs new technologies, it's an integration of energy, transportation, and communication. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great, because I now have nothing to say, because that is the best definition of smart cities that I think I've ever heard. Let me first say thank you to the Congresswoman for having me and having Samsung and letting us be a part of the event yesterday as well. We know that you're a fighter, but I can tell you she will save us from the zombie apocalypse on our virtual reality yesterday. So thank you so much. And Mayor Benjamin, thank you. So Samsung Electronics America, most people obviously know us either for the cell phone that you have in your pocket, the TV that you have on your wall, increasingly the home appliances. We're the #1 fastest growing home appliance company in the United States. Our North American headquarters is in New Jersey. We manufacture semiconductors in Texas, 10,000 employees in Texas, bringing 1,000 employees to South Carolina, just down the road from Mayor Benjamin in Newberry County. had 2 job fairs in Columbia and looking forward to hiring some folks from there. But we're also involved in things that you may not know that we're doing, from the LED lighting modules for smart cities to helping create the network and the actual hardware for the networks in smart cities. We'll talk later about how we've actually helped all of South Korea to have an infrastructure to be an entire smart country. And that's ultimately, I think, the vision that we want to have for the United States, is that all of us are interconnected. The smart cities is interconnected everything. Commercial IoT, industrial IoT, the IoT in your house, in your office buildings. Humans spend 93% of their time indoors. So we have to have things like smart lighting inside of your building, but that smart lighting will be connected to the street light that's monitoring the weather, so that the smart light can raise or lower the amount of light to help increase your mood in your building. So there are all types of things that smart cities and smart devices, like I said, interconnected everything, and ultimately it's about improving people's quality of life. Everything that these devices do, these technologies do, will be hopefully moving the ball forward on improving quality of life and creating economic opportunities for all communities. So there are, someone has to install all this, or someone has to build all of this stuff. So there are lots of different economic opportunities as well. I think we really want communities to be partners with us and with other companies that are out there building the infrastructure for smart cities. So obviously, it's a very expensive investment for cities. So we have to look at things like, what are the models for ownership of those different technologies? Is it going to be all government owned? Is it going to be public-private partnership? Is it going to be privately owned? These are all things that we obviously have to work out, and different communities will have different models, but it's something that we should be thinking about, and we should be planning for the future for data. I mean, all of this is built on data. It's all built on analytics. I need to be able to predict what will happen, so that we can make those traffic lights smarter, and so you don't sit and wait and ultimately creating more pollution by sitting and waiting at a light when there's nobody around you. Sending public safety resources to a place in the city when we know that crime may increase in that particular place, or be able to redistribute them when it's going to go somewhere else. So, but we have to be comfortable sharing the data across government, industry, multiple industries. Transportation companies have to talk to the electric companies, and have to talk to the local governments, and we obviously need to build in privacy, but we've become more comfortable as a society. We give Google everything, so that's how they know how long it's going to take me to get from my office, know when I'm leaving in the morning to go to my office, and how long it's going to take me to get there. So that's the type of things that ultimately will be shared. So I think the last thing that I'll say is that one exciting thing about the data that I think we'll produce is the ability, I just read a thing that said, Lyft produced this data that said that the hottest new restaurant market in DC was Ivy City. And so what I'm excited about is the fact that, and that's based on their ride data, who's going there, at dinner time. What I'm excited about is it's going to help communities of color. We start businesses even more than majority communities. And so can we use the data to learn where we're going to put the services that we're offering, to tailor the services that we're offering. So using that data for good to improve our quality of life, and then ultimately make our businesses stronger and thrive.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Marie Sylla with T-Mobile. I'm just very honored to be here today and be a part of this panel. First, before I start, I just want to acknowledge Congresswoman Clark. She is on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and when we have this discussion about not being left behind, we have policymakers who have a seat at the table. And she is the only CBC woman on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. So I'm glad that you're there, and I'm glad you have a seat at the table. And I also want to acknowledge Mayor Benjamin, because part of this partnership when we talk about smart cities is making sure that we have the relationships with the state and locales. So thank you for doing this, and also Commissioner Honorable, who gets the big picture with energy and technology and what it can do. So I'm going to be kind of brief, but there are a couple of things that I want to point out. So this is connectivity. This is the core. I'm with T-Mobile, the wireless company. We've got 73 million subscribers. We're the third largest carrier in the U.S. And when you look at this, how many people have a Nest? Okay. So just think of a world where you're going to have massive applications that can be controlled by this one device. Think about how efficient your lives could be. So there's a couple of things that I want to bring up, and I'm just going to make this quick, but there's some stats that when we're having the conversation and we think about the role of smart cities and the benefits to communities, 3 million jobs, 500 billion in contributions to the GDP, 275 billion of new wireless investment, 160 billion of smart city benefits and savings, and the jobs. So we're going to get started. I have a little video that I wanted to share just so you can get a sense of kind of what a smart city looks like, and also what T-Mobile's plans when it comes to 5G technology. I'm also going to touch a little bit on what we call narrowband LTE, which is 4G. And that is actually the pathway to a 5G technology. But we're going to talk about that because smart cities have already happened. So we'll go ahead and start. See, there's going to be no latency. The speeds are fast. It's basically like 4G on steroids. You know, the massive battery life that it's going to take. And so this is a technology for our company that we are rolling out in 2019, and by 2020 we will have 5G covered nationwide. We are the first carrier to announce that, and so that is huge. And there are other carriers that have announced plans for 5G, but you know, when you look at, you know, maybe 5 years ago what you could do on your device when it was texting or just, you know, making a call, everything is data now. And this is just taking it to the next level. So it's going to go at crazy speeds, and we're going to be able to do a lot more.
Is the future.
All right. Well, you know, I'm a little nonprofit that serves the black community here. And we're going to show a video too now. I like the concept. You know, it's you know, they got some resources here. We're trying to get something. They got some resources. So we're going to go ahead and play the video. And as we're teeing that up, I want to thank Morgan Butler, who put this together and did a great job. And certainly also Will Searcy and Vashti Hinton. So let's go ahead and play this here. So certainly thank you so much for your leadership here, Congresswoman Clark. Appreciate you so much. So, you know, Joint Center, founded in 1970 to support black elected officials. We continue to work closely with the CBC. Right now, we're focused on the future of black folks. Automation, artificial intelligence, big data. These things are leaving Silicon Valley. They're going across the nation. So we go to the grocery store, there's a self-checkout lane there. We talk about these autonomous vehicles. This stuff is just the beginning, right? We know it's coming. And really the question that we need to ask ourselves in terms of our community is, are we going to wait for the leftovers, the crumbs, after all this stuff rolls in and say, oh, give us 13% of whatever, right? Or are we going to be on the forefront, right? I know a lot of you have seen it, Hidden Figures, movie, right? She got passed over for the promotion at the beginning, right? But then they knew the IBM was coming and they might get displaced as mathematicians, right? So she went out, she got the Fortran book, learned Fortran, and not just for herself, she got her team. She got her team on Fortran, so when the IBM arrived, they were ready to go, and the other folks were coming to them, asking for opportunities, right? So the question is, how can we be in that space and do the same thing today? How can we use this change, this disruption to our advantage, to get new jobs, to get new entrepreneurial activity opportunities, to really leapfrog ahead here? And smart communities tech, and I call it community so we don't exclude our rural brothers and sisters, right? It's critical in terms of leapfrogging forward and economic development. We talked about the autonomous vehicles, talk about ambulances. You're in the ambulance, sending information about what's going on with you to the hospital, and the hospital sending its records back to the ambulance so that they can talk and treat you well. We saw the garbage bins that signal when they need to empty. You know, lot of applications here. Now, so we've got to move forward. We've got to move forward. In moving forward, we have to grapple with real challenges, right? Just because they're challenges, we're not going to solve them if we don't grapple with them, right? So some of those you saw, there's going to be some shifting of jobs. When we talk about the trash removal and the signal, there may be some changes in terms of sanitation workers, and we have to consciously see that coming and make sure that those folks are placed and have some good, solid jobs that are tied to the new economy, right? Data bias, so we think about predictive policing, right? And so this notion of, oh, we're going to send police where the arrests are, most of the arrests are, that sounds right, but recognizing that black folks and white folks use marijuana at about the same rate, but black folks are 3 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana. If you're basing where you're going to send police on that kind of, frankly, biased data, right, you're just going to end up in a loop, right? There are going to be more and more people arrested here. So it doesn't, so there's data bias. That's just one example. The redlining issue we talked about, we'll talk about it a little later. Focus on kind of using this as a tool to open access. And then also we need to make sure vendors of color are a part of the smart cities revolution in terms of providing services here and installing and fixing technology. I think that before I turn it over, just want to go ahead and plug our 5G Smart Cities and Communities of Color report. A lot of folks here have been very instrumental in this room to helping us put this together and giving us feedback, so would refer you to this and suggest you take a look at it. Thanks so much. All right.
This panel, y'all, it's a pretty super panel. First question, probably for David Owens and maybe also David Albritton. Would you please talk about the role of the electric utility industry in this process in terms of building the electricity infrastructure? And David, maybe if you could also address infrastructure development from the car manufacturer's perspective and what investments the auto industry anticipates.
So much of what has been said with respect to a smart city is electrification. So the electric industry obviously is very dominant in building electric infrastructure. So let me give one example of a component of smart technology. It's a smart meter. How many of you have a smart electric meter? Every hand should have gone up, right? Exactly. Now what's a smart meter? There's a difference between a smart meter is a meter that's not dumb. In other words, the dumb meter had all those dials. The smart meter is digitized, okay? And you can look at that meter at 11 o'clock and write down the number. You can look at that meter at 12 o'clock, write down the, subtract the 2, that's how much energy that you use. So you can now be more energy efficient. So we have 65 million smart meters that have been installed throughout the United States. It is a digital link between the customer and the utility. It gives the customer the opportunity now to manage their overall energy use and to manage their bills. The smart meters also does something else. We had Superstorm Sandy, even the recent hurricanes. So I'm an engineer by background. The smart meter lets you know what customers are out. You don't have to drive around the neighborhood and see who has a porch light on. Smart meter will tell you. So we are building infrastructure. We're building tremendous electric infrastructure. We're building charging stations in major cities. We're digitizing our overall distribution system. We're building smart lights, as I mentioned before. We're putting in distributed resources. We're partnering with a lot of different firms so that customers have greater control over their end use. We're spending $100 billion annually on smarter energy infrastructure. So the electric industry, they're partnering with technology companies, they're partnering with the government, they're partnering with consumers to make life better and to reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay, is this microphone still not working? Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so from the automotive perspective, I want you to think about supply and demand. Okay, so there are 263 million cars that are registered in the United States. That's a lot of demand. Actually, is this one covered? Okay, talk a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come closer. I'll be like a rapper here. There are 263 million cars that are registered in the United States. We launched the Chevrolet Bolt EV electric vehicle last year, and we've sold 13,000 of them in a year. So if you think about the dichotomy in the numbers, right? So there needs to be a huge demand, and that will come over time. So if you think about infrastructure, though, the infrastructure companies like EVgo and some of the others that provide charging stations tell the automotive industry that we need you to sell more EVs for us to justify the business model for putting infrastructure in. We say for us to sell more cars, you need to have more infrastructure, right? So what's going to happen? So if you look at this from individual sale perspective, all right, selling 13,000 volts, and Tesla says they're going to sell X amount of EV cars, etc. But if you look at different models for usage and for ownership, okay, if you look at rental services, right, we have a personal mobility app that's part of GM's that's called Maven. Maven, you can use your phone, it's a free app, you sign up, and you can rent a Maven car. You can sign up for free, but you can rent a Maven car for usage, for things like using it for Lyft or Uber, ride sharing, or those types of things, for a very nominal price. And so we have a fleet of we launched the Maven product about 18 months ago. We now have 10,000 cars in our fleet. We just dropped about 100 EV cars into that fleet, and they were stocked up like butter. So if you think about it, if I, as an automotive company, can go to an infrastructure company and say, okay, in Cleveland, I can drop 100 EVs in your city tomorrow, what do you think that's going to do for somebody that says, now, I have a justification to create infrastructure? So it's going to take an ongoing conversation. It's going to take a level of joint investment from industry, from cities. And so this public-private partnership idea is going to have to become more pervasive, and we're going to have conversations. Because over time, the numbers of electric vehicles that are going to be in the marketplace are going to grow and grow and grow. But I also want to talk about the other strategy that we have as GM. It's not only battery electric vehicles, but also hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles as well. So if you think about the use of hydrogen, using the same types of battery technology that you have in a battery electric vehicle, it's a very efficient technology. And in fact, it's more fuel efficient than gasoline. Yeah, and if you think about the comparison with the time it takes to charge a battery as compared to the 3 minutes it takes you to fill up a hydrogen tank that's in a vehicle, it's a very compelling opportunity. So with that dual strategy GM is thinking about, if you think about infrastructure being different and not just electric infrastructure, you think about all of the gas stations on every corner around every city. What if you had a hydrogen fuel tank on that same location as infrastructure that you could then fill up hydrogen cars as well? That's another thing we're going to be thinking about as well.
All right, I'm going to take a moment to address some smart knees and some smart heels and some smart bottoms. We got 15 open seats here, y'all. Why don't you come sit down for a second? We'll make sure if that card goes up in color, and I'm talking about up and down the economic spectrum. If you're buying spectrum like David Green, or just if you're on the streets and you're looking to improve your quality of life, let's talk about the story there, please.
Well, I appreciate it. So pull in from Marie's point on this 5G. I know most of you all are experts in this room, but I want to just go back to folks who aren't experts, right? In terms of why this 5G is important, right? Yeah, the phone piece is important in our relationship to the internet, right? But this Internet of Things is not about the relationship between us and the internet. It's about the relationship between the things that are around us to the internet, right? And how they are all connected, even absent this kind of thing, right? So a very simple example is obviously your Fitbit kind of thing, right? But then even when we talk about these smart lights or meters, etc., right? These are all things that are connected, right? And because of the enhanced capacity and speed of 5G, there's data that can go back and forth. So when we talk about autonomous vehicles being able to stop precisely, because it's so fast and because there's so much data, a car will be able to, right now you drive like, you know, if you're going 50 miles per hour, you're 5 cars behind someone, right? Whereas with this technology, if you're going 50 miles per hour, you might be able to be behind, one behind, if it's an autonomous vehicle, right? Because of issues of cars communicating with one another and the speed of the data and things moving so quickly. So I just kind of wanted to just set up to say, this infrastructure piece, it sounds a little disconnected, but it is integral to us moving forward in terms of smart cities here, right?
He's a professor as well. I love to be in the class, y'all. I love to be in the class. I'm not trying to pass, but I love to be in the class.
So obviously the transportation piece, as you know, getting your folks to jobs, right? And the right types of tools for transportation, whether it's what time the bus is coming or some type of autonomous vehicle for folks who don't have cars, to be able to get cheaply to work, a lot of tools there. I think also this investment piece, there's a huge investment in terms of creating the 5G infrastructure and smart cities, and how can we ensure that, you know, black entrepreneurs and investors, right, are part of that and engaged in that. I do want to say something about this concept of updating permitting, right? Our cities need to update permitting. Right now, you got a big cell tower that we're all familiar with, right? But the way 5G works is these smaller antenna, they're called small cells, you put them like on top of a light pole, right? And so if you have the exact same permitting process for a big, 100, foot tower that you have with just a little light, it just doesn't make sense. And, so you got to have it fit so things don't slow down too much. So the permitting piece is key. Also, some real clear rules for data. Right now, we don't have clear rules on Facebook, and they're having trouble, right? There's going to be a lot of data involved, and we need clear rules. We talked about the data bias, how we deal with the data bias, but also to ensure privacy, right, in terms of data, but also some data being open, right? So you can envision a young brother or sister starting a company with an app that tells you when the buses are going to arrive, right? And they're able to do that because they get open data from the city about the buses, right? So there's a lot of economic development, even at the entrepreneurial level, right, if you have some open data.
And can I just add to Spencer's point? And I can tell you the infrastructure piece is really critical because partly how the carriers and part of our 5G build out is going to require, small cells, and what that is, they're I wish I had a picture, but they're these boxes, pizza boxes, exactly. And they're gonna be put up and they help with like capacity issues when you're, you know, when there are some constraints with capacity and denser networks. And carriers are really relying on this when it comes to 5G. And I'll tell you, for my company, we have about 28,000 applications with state and locals right now to put these small cells. And I can give you an example. In the city of Cincinnati, you know, there was a little bit of conflict when it came to the aesthetics, and the industry was able to reach a consensus. They went into a room with state locals, sat down, and were able to get, you know, a really good piece of policy out. And now, you know, it passed, and they're able to streamline, you know, some of these regulations and these hurdles, because they recognize, you know, we want to be a part of this. We don't want to be left behind. We want to get, you know, make sure that the infrastructure is in place. So I think a big part of this is also partnering and working with state and locals, and also working, you know, at the federal level as well.
And in terms of these small cells, right, we're talking about putting this pizza box on top of a light bulb, right? There's some folks right now in our communities who can do that, and some entrepreneurs who can be contractors who can do that, right? So a lot of you all are connected back home where you are, and if you're an elected official or you're connected to elected officials, these elected officials really, when a T-Mobile comes and says, hey, they need to step up and say, okay, that's great, we're gonna help you in terms of permitting, etc. But what are you doing in terms of minority contractors, right? That's gotta be a priority in terms of elected officials.
And we should also think about the future, right? We're talking about what we have today, what all of us do as professionals, but what about our kids? What are we teaching them? STEM education should be a principal focus for everything that's going on. Robotics classes, right? We're hiring more computer engineers in GM than we ever have before, because the technology in cars has changed so dramatically. Every car that you drive today, the brand new cars, especially the high-end cars, have between 100 and 200 million lines of code in the computer systems. You think about that, it's really a rolling node in a network. So how are we teaching our children to be able to work on those networks, to create that infrastructure, to build all of those things? That's the investment that we need from public entities, we need it from private entities. I know we've invested about $80 million over the last 10 years in STEM education. We're doing a lot in Detroit because that's a huge industry in Detroit, and we're trying to keep that talent. Instead of going out to Silicon Valley and work for the Googles and the Apples of the world, why can't we have it in Detroit, work with Derron Motors and some of the other automotive companies? That's one of the focuses that we're doing. And so that's something to think about as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And Spencer, of course, he starts answering questions before I ask. But I knew he was going to do that, because I wanted to get into a nice back and forth with the mayor on the same issue recently. But we all understand that if in fact we are going to be in the vanguard to take advantage of 5G, and every city wants to compete with every other city, and if you're going to have the densification of the network and get the latency required to do all the great things that we know that technology can do, it's going to take some real partnerships, some real partnerships. We're talking about, probably in a city like our city, 30 cell towers around the city, you're probably talking about 600 to 900 small cells, pizza boxes, I've never heard that term before, being deployed. Have you seen, I'd love to hear a little bit more about Cincinnati. Have you all seen opportunities? We know things are coming. How have you seen some in your various corporate or business capacities, seen some opportunities for policymakers to leverage what we know is coming downhill that's good for change, for our businesses, for our minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs and young people pursuing careers in STEM? Where have you seen these things happen and done right, if you got some examples?
In terms of job opportunities,
leveraging proper public policy influence to try and make sure that everyone has a seat at the table.
well, I think one of the things that we're doing, and I can tell you from a supplier diversity perspective, we actually had the head of our supplier diversity was here in DC, and he participated in a policy event at the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce. So one of the things that we've been doing is we've been working with outside organizations to let them know, you know, T-Mobile's here, we have a supplier clearinghouse, we want you to come to us, we right now, and I wrote this down, we are aspiring, and this is in your report, to get to increase our diversity procurement by 50%. So that's over 537 million in spend. So we're trying to increase that and find, you know, more opportunities. And this is a great time, I think, for diversely owned businesses to come to the table and work with the T-Mobile.
Could I
Please,
respond?
absolutely, please.
So we at Edison Electric Institute, we have a supply diversity program that's been in existence for over 35 years. And this gives us an opportunity to have businesses all across the U.S. to come and to work with utilities and to demonstrate to utilities that they have expertise and experiences and technologies that could be beneficial to the utilities. You asked about public policy. Some states, and I'm not suggesting that all states do this. So for example, the state of California has targeted spending that all the utilities have to provide, some opportunities to diverse suppliers. I think that number is as high as 20% of their overall spend has got to be in that direction. Again, I'm not advocating that be mandated, but it's certainly, the commissions certainly are conscious of the need to have diversity in all of these areas. I might add another point, just to kind of round out what all the panels have said. Our conversation today is about data analytics and intelligent services. And I really do appreciate the tremendous improvement in communications technology moving to 5G. But there's another technology that is also substantially improving, and it's energy. And the element, much like you say, the Internet of Things, there's something called the grid of things. Because all of these technologies plug into the grid. So the grid energizes all of these technologies together. And if we're talking about diversity, we need to make, and I made the comment, that the electric industry is spending $100 billion, $52 billion on the grid. We need to make sure that of that $52 billion, that we have people of color that are helping to build that infrastructure. And at EEI, that's what we're committed to do. We're trying to encourage the companies substantially to have diversity in their overall spend, and diversity in their hiring practices, diversity in their training practices, and diversity in the firms that provide these resources.
Thank you. Please, Ben.
I'd also like us to not forget the existing industries that we have. If you own a cleaner, if you own a pizza shop, right? If you can leverage the technology, transportation technology, to deliver your product to its end unit without having somebody come into your shop to pick it up, that's a new business model that you didn't have before. And so what application can you put on a phone that I can drop, have the autonomous car come to my house, drop off my cleaning in front of my house, take it there, bring it, pick it up. If somebody could come up with an idea like that, they don't have to be a technologist to come up with a new business model that allows somebody to take advantage of technology. I think about what's available today for somebody. If you're in between jobs, or if you're a college student wanting to make some extra money, all you need to have is a bank account, a clean driving record, and a driver's license, and you can be working today. You can rent a car from a service like Maven or through Lyft or Uber or somewhere else, and you can drive through those ride-sharing services. And while you're not doing that, you can also deliver packages for Amazon. You can make some decent money in the interim while you're between jobs and those types of things. You don't have to have a technology degree to do those things, but think about the opportunities while you're driving in those vehicles and the hundreds of people that you network with on a daily basis, who you can come across, right? I live here in the DC area. I live about 10 miles from where we are here, but I work in Detroit, so I lift to the airport and back twice a week. So I meet dozens of people all the time. I work in public relations. In the 2 years that I've been commuting back and forth, I've met 4 people working in public relations. Guess what network we now have? I've introduced them, and it's a great thing. And so we should think about this holistically, not only from the technology perspective, but how can we help people?
Thank you. Mr. Parks, I know that Samsung has been at the forefront of smart cities development, doing some exciting things in South Korea, the first nationwide commercial IoT. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So we're the network partner for SK Telecom in building out this network. It actually went live last year, so we almost have a year of experience in this network. But it's two different network technologies. I am not a technologist, so I am going to read but one is a long-range LoRa, for short, technology, and then it's deployed alongside the narrowband LTE system that Marie was talking about. So you have both, the two networks complement one another, and they, from a device standpoint, what the difference is that for the long range, it's a slower but longer range system, and it doesn't, it's better for more stationary devices. So your smart meters and things that are not going to move versus the narrowband, which is better for more mobile devices like the connected cars. The long range is about almost a 9-mile range. That's what the long range means. We've developed, or should I say, SK Telecom has developed a pricing model that has significantly lowered, it's not sort of a pricing model for your phone data. It's a much lower data rate. It's about a tenth of the cost of your cell phone data plan that they've been able to deploy these, so you can use more data, consume more data. And they're offering services like one called Kiko. It's a GPS-enabled key fob that allows you to monitor where your children are when they come and go. Allows you to monitor elderly relatives who may be living alone, ensuring that they get back home, ensuring that they don't fall, ensuring that they are safe. One called IoT Black Box that mixes GPS with video and audio capabilities. That offers the ability to monitor your vehicle and send SMS alerts to the owner's smartphone. One called Smart Talk Talk, which I have no idea why, offers a similar alert system, but it'll inform you if someone crashes into your car while it's parked. So you no longer have to hope someone leaves that note. You sort of have in real time who hit your car. It uses cameras and take a picture and that sort of thing. So literally everything connected to everything else.
But you love marketing, so Kiko can tell you where your children are, where elderly seniors are. The smart cities, let's fast forward 10 years from now. What should we expect in your industry? What does that world look like? And Spencer, maybe you answer it last. I want to talk a little bit about a day of equity in smart cities. What does that look like for families and people of color? I want y'all to jump in and touch on some of it already, but what does the world look like 10 years from now? Virginia, please, why don't you work on down David?
So, if you think about autonomous cars, it's all about safety, right? In 2015, more than 35,000 people died on roads in the United States. So, the advent of autonomous cars can help reduce that number significantly. And so, if you think about the infrastructure that's needed, the data pipe that's needed, 5G will help enable that. 4G LTE is a strong enabler today, but the improvements that we'll have in that data pipe through 5G will be significant. We've had General Motors cars OnStar for about 20 years, and it's been a very, very significant technology. But as we improve that with the advent of 5G and the coming online of that, it's going to be fantastic. If you think about it from the sharing perspective, right, the different models on how people will access cars. So you may choose not to buy a vehicle. You may not lease a vehicle. You may buy into a subscription service, for example, and use multiple cars. We're doing a pilot in New York City called Book by Cadillac. It's our premium luxury brand, and for a single price for a month, single price per month, you can buy into kind of an ecosystem and have access to any Cadillac that you want for as long as you want. So you could get a Cadillac Escalade today, and if you want to get a car next week, it'll be delivered to your driveway or delivered to where you're going to pick it up, and you can rotate that way. So if you think about that and cascade that across the industry, the usage model and the purchasing model can change, and we do that all via an app on the phone. right? So those are things to consider. So, that is going to change as well. If you think about just your productivity in going from point A to point B, if you ride a subway, you really can't sit there and read the paper in comfort, or you can't really do your email in comfort and have to worry about it. If you're driving to work, and if you live anywhere in a city like this one, where it takes you an hour and a half to go anywhere in the morning, imagine if you're riding in an autonomous car all of a sudden, and you can sit in the back and actually be productive for 3 hours a day instead of having to drive and worry about those things. That's what the city, city of the future and a smart city is going to enable going forward. And so, in electrification, you're going to have cities that have no crashes, no congestion, and no emissions. So electric vehicles are going to become more pervasive as well. And so if you think about the opportunities for new jobs in those spaces, it's going to be tremendous. Thank you.
So just close your eyes and imagine you're in 2030. I'll tell you what you'll see. First, I think we're going to be dictated through artificial intelligence. All the conversation we had today is really about having sensors and monitors that really are going to begin to control our lives. We have a handout out front, and let me kind of just try to emphasize some of the points in the handout. So let's do with lighting as an example. Smart lighting. Okay, smart lighting. What will you be able to do with smart lighting? Well, the lighting will be able to turn on automatically when you get into a parking lot. The parking lot will be dark, the lights will come on. The lighting will also have a little sensor on the top of it, and will be able to observe everything that's happening in that parking lot for safety reasons. Okay, that's artificial intelligence. The building across the street, that building across the street is going to have a lot of smart devices. It's going to have a smart thermostat. It's going to control all the temperatures. It's going to have smart lighting. It's going to have smart heating. It's going to be able to observe the temperature of everybody in the building. It's going to be able to raise the temperature or lower the temperature when people enter and leave the building. Transportation. David spoke about transportation. Autonomous vehicles. Cars that are driverless. Traffic lights that are controlled through artificial intelligence to relieve congestion. That's interesting. In the home, what we have in the home? Well, some folks may have a rooftop solar facility and a smart inverter that gives information to the utility, a smart meter, an electric charging station. All of these devices are technology, data and analytics and intelligent devices that give information back to the utility. Microgrids. What's a microgrid? A microgrid is a source of energy with wires. So a university is going to have that. Many cities are going to have their own little mini grid. That mini grid is going to be able to kick on and off. So for example, in some areas, if the big grid goes down, that microgrid will kick in. So that's what I see in the future. I see a totally digitized society, a society that is not only digitized, but a society that has very intelligent devices that will control our daily lives. And you know what? Electricity is going to fuel it all.
Thank you. So, I don't know what it's going to look like in the future, but I think something that Spencer touched on, it's so extraordinarily important for our communities to be proactive in ensuring that we don't just get the crumbs, but that we are at the forefront. I don't think that elected and appointed officials really know how much power they have, and I hope that officials will use it and leverage it, partner with the private sector to ensure that our communities are protected, and like I said, are getting more than our fair share, quite frankly, than we have to. I have a dear friend who I know Commissioner Honorable knows here on the DC Public Service Commission, Willie Phillips, who he is singularly focused, while electric utility regulation is what they do, it's singularly focused on ensuring that people have jobs and ensuring that we're investing in the community. So all of the companies that have to report to all of these elected and appointed officials, will have to answer the question, should have to answer the question, how are you investing back into our communities? What opportunities are you creating for community propeller? Maria's touched on the fact that the citizen, the individual person, the connected citizen is going to be the nucleus of this whole ecosystem. But much to Samsung's chagrin, everyone does not have a smartphone. We're happy to sell you one out front if you'd like. But how do we ensure that those who are not, who do not currently have the technology are not left behind, that they are, and even if you do have a smartphone, what if you don't have the data plan that is necessary? The Un-carrier has helped lower prices, and I appreciate that. So people are more able to get these plans, but if you still have to, if you're controlling everything in your life from your cell phone, you need a data plan to do that. So we have to ensure that people have the connectivity that they need to take part. And then we have to ensure, for example, everyone doesn't have a credit card or a debit card or a bank account. So they're not able to use wonderful services like Maven or Lyft or even bike share to get around town. So I just think we have to really think about, and so fintech companies have to be a part of that solution to solve these problems for the unbanked. So I just think that we have to think very broadly about how we ensure that no one in our community is left behind as we move forward with these technologies.
Thank you. Marie?
So I see more digital empowerment in 10 years. I see a lot more entrepreneurs. I see opportunities for new and innovative applications to come to the marketplace to help with all of these industries. And I'll just leave it where I started, 3 million new jobs in smart communities. I see that even triple. 160 billion in smart community benefits and savings to smart communities. And I think with all of this, that this will go back to the community in 10 years. So.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Spencer, of course, you're a policy guy as well. Listen to David's comments earlier, David Owens. It's so powerful, the influence of artificial intelligence and how it's going to change the way in which we live. It makes me also worry to some degree. What kind of world are we going into? What happens when artificial intelligence begins to replace critical thinking? Will we be able to think for ourselves? Will we become more productive? Or in this world in which we're all so connected now, but seemingly socially disconnected? I see Ms. McBath over here. And I remember when I first met her, she said she's Jordan's mom. And in this world in which we're just, it's Jordan Davis's mother, one of the mothers of the movement, we seem to be so connected but disconnected. And what does this future look like for us? So I just want to set it up a little bit, please.
Well, I'm on a panel tomorrow on the future of work, but I'm going to preview a little bit of data that I'm going to present there here first. So at the Joint Center, we looked at 20 occupations that are very susceptible to automation, 80% plus, right? That had the largest number of black jobs within them. And we found that of the 18 million black folks who are employed in the nation, that this accounted for about 4.7 million of them. So about 26% of folks are concentrated. So this isn't all the folks, like telemarketers, a third of telemarketers are black, and they're 99%, but it's not even included in there. These are just the top 20 jobs, most popular jobs of black folks that have over an 80% chance of automation here. So this is coming, and it's very significant. Now, I'll roll out more detailed information tomorrow, but this question of what the future looks like, right? I think David gave a great description of what the future looks like. question is, what does the future look like for us, right? And I think it depends on policy and it depends on what we do right now, right? So you talked about digital equity plan and pulling together a plan now to look at how do we include people, what are our strategies, right? So if there are going to be some people who are no longer drivers, right? How can we position the garage that Uber is going to have and place it in the middle of my community so that some of the people who are working there and servicing the cars really reflect the diversity of the community as opposed to having it somewhere where we're not, right? By having a plan where it's based on inclusion, focusing on access and adoption here to internet, obviously. Digital readiness and upskilling. I agree with David, certainly STEM is very, very important in terms of kids. But there are jobs that adults can have that are kind of mid-level skill jobs that they can get with some proper training right now, where they can move from making $25,000 to $60,000 a year. You know, how do we work on that upskilling piece of our folks? Minority contracting, we said, it's got to be a part of that plan. Dealing with implicit bias in some of these systems we talked about. And just to be frank here, we need, cities really do need a full-time digital equity point person or manager, someone who is responsible for how do we use this tool to, again, include people. So just as opposed to, you know, it is what it is, how do we use it to exclude? I just want to add one other thing to clarify from before. One of the reasons this is important in terms of economic development, in terms of smart cities, smart grid, 5G, if you're attracting companies, they want an infrastructure that is there and in place, right? And if they're going to, and frankly, engage in some automation, there's going to be some automation in companies, and they're going to have robots, etc. They're not all going to be connected to some core, right? They're going to use 5G and other things to kind of move around and interact with humans and do things. So this infrastructure, if you don't have the infrastructure, that's a reason the company should not move to your town, right? So you got to have the infrastructure in place.
Or build it.
Or build it, right.
All right. I want to recognize Joe Gibbons from the Energy Equity Alliance and give him a few moments here.
Thank you, Chair Benjamin, and I'd really like that Congresswoman.
So make sure your microphone's on and pull up here a little bit.
There you go. We're good. We're good. It works for me. First of all, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Mayor Benjamin, and thank you, Congresswoman, for putting on this panel. I'll tell you, the information that is being delivered here today, to me, is very exciting. I'm the chair of a national organization called the Energy Equity Alliance, and what we do is we advocate for low income, fixed income, and people of color in the energy space. We get involved with different public service commissions in different states. We get involved with the urban leagues and the ministerial alliances in different states to bring these kinds of issues forward, so that when we hear a piece of legislation in the state is not inclusive, it is exclusive, we then go to that community and get involved with the local organizations to make sure that our community is heard. So what I'm hearing today is extremely, extremely exciting. And David, I know you talked about we can't mandate things like distribution of work, but with all the new data we have available to us, with all this digital collection of data, how do we then take that data and put it into public policy so that we can give the Congresswoman, when she asks a question, she already knows the answer. So what you can, in essence, what you can do is you don't mandate it, but you know the answer before you ask the question. So you, in essence, embarrass somebody into doing the right thing. Right? So it's not a mandate. It's not a mandate. So in my mind, what we need to do is to take all this data, take all this information, take advantage of this technology to make sure that we're all included. Because I'll tell you, a feature is not a feature unless it's a benefit to all of us. You know, we talk about the features of all these things and what they can do, but unless we can show a direct benefit, take Hurricane Irma. We got smart meters. You know, we always talk about our communities. How come we're the last ones restored? How come we're the last ones restored? Hurricane Irma just marched through Florida where I live. And I heard complaints, well, how come we're the last one? Well, guess what? We have smart meters, we have smart technology, so we can plan for that restoration to make sure that our communities are turned on at the same time as the wealthy communities are turned on. So that feature of that smart meter is now a direct benefit to our community. So what we're looking for is, how do we take all this information, how do we take this technology, how do we take this data, and turn those features into benefits for our community? So thank you for a few minutes of talking. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm going to shift some questions for our panelists. I know that Mayor Marks, did you want to say something, maybe get the first question? But sure. Please, y'all run up the microphone if you have some questions for this fantastic panel. I have the pleasure of moderating this, but I did not have the responsibility of assembling this incredible panel. So thank you. I don't know who did it? This has been incredible. So we'll first hear from John Marks, the former mayor of Tallahassee, Florida, and then we'll take all of the questions.
Thank you, Steve. Wonderful panel. I mean, absolutely. The information that you have received today is cutting edge. It is the future. It really is wonderful. And I want to thank all of you representatives. Thank you so much, Congresswoman, for what you've done here today to bring this to the front of what we're doing. I've been involved in this industry. I was, in a prior life, I like to say I was chairman of the Florida Public Service Commission. I was on that commission for 8 years, and I've known David for, we won't say how long, David. I've known David for many years and worked with Edison Electric Institute through those years. Most recently, however, somebody tricked me into being the mayor of the city of Tallahassee. I served Tallahassee for 12 years, and what's unique about Tallahassee, we operate our own electric system, our own water system, our own gas system, which puts us in an extremely unique position. About 6 years ago, I convinced the city to implement a smart grid system. We have one of the most robust smart grid systems in the nation at this point, completely. We digitized our meters about 6 or 7 years ago. I was able to convince them because of some things I learned from the Edison Electric Institute. Now, I say all that to ask a question. The question is that in the telecommunications industry, we have provided the end user, significant abilities to make choices. I think all of us can remember, maybe not all of us, remember party lines?
Yes. Yes.
I don't remember. But
John, as you get it going, you may have to explain to some people what a party line is. Because it's not what it sounds like.
Okay. Sometimes we're really excited. Or you call people up to go to a party. That's not it. Party lines, many years ago, you have a neighborhood would have one line. And there would be several people on that, several residents on that one line. And if there was a ring, you had to recognize the ring in order to know if that's what you should have. So, think about this now. Think about it. At that time, you had multiple people on one line. What do you have today? Multiple lines on one person. So it has changed significantly. What that does, of course, is allow you to have more choices, which is what the end user really wants. When you think about everything you're talking about, if you give the end user, I don't care if it's in the automobile industry or whatever, if you give them the ability to choose, they're much happier. I found this out as being mayor. I mean, give choices. So, having said that, I'm concerned about the electric industry. Why aren't we allowing or providing choices to our end users in the electric industry, much the same way we have done in the telecommunications industry? There's a way to do that, David, and we need to talk, because choices, that's the question. You give an end user a choice, that's the question. Let me put it this way. I live in a city with 80,000 college students in the capital of the state of Florida. The student does not use electricity the same way that I do in my house. Okay? A six-person family does not use electricity the same way that the student. So, We need to be able to allow them to, can we provide something so they can have choices in the way they use their electricity? We need to provide choices. That's my question. Can we do it? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. They want to answer that. Thank you, Mayor Marks.
So I do agree with you that customers need choice. In fact, much of what the vision of Edison Electric Institute is a vision which is customer driven rather than a vision that focuses on a centralized electric system. So let's talk about choice. So some customers, for example, can afford to have their own energy source. I mentioned earlier some customers can have a rooftop solar facility. Everybody can't have a rooftop solar facility. Everybody doesn't have a roof. Everybody doesn't have a home. So utilities are saying, let those customers who want to produce their own energy, let them do it. And when that sun isn't shining, that customer's got to rely on the electric grid. So let's make sure that we give those customers who are affluent, who want to have a rooftop solar facility, who can afford to have an electric vehicle, who can afford to have battery backup, let that customer have all of that. But realize that that customer is linked to something that's very vital, and it's called the electric grid. So let's make sure that that customer has that option, but let's also make sure that that customer doesn't, while they have that option, doesn't shift the grid costs to those customers who don't have that option. So that's kind of one issue. There's these other issues. All customers want to be green. Many customers want to have green technologies. They want to reduce the carbon footprint. Some customers don't have that choice to do that. So what they do is the utility gives them the option of a broad array of rate pricing so that the customer can manage their overall energy use. That's what a smart meter does. Smart meter says to the customer, you can look at how much energy you're using, and you know average price that you're paying. You can calculate your own bill daily. So what the utility is trying to do now is give the customer a menu of rate options through the smart meter so the customer can have choices. So I do agree with you. Now we have to expand all these choices. I think that was your point. We cannot limit these choices. Give the customer the opportunity to have their own power supply source. Give the customer the opportunity to have an electric vehicle. Give the customer the opportunity to pick and choose the kind of rate schedule that they want, whether they want to be a large consumer of energy or not a large consumer of energy. Give them that opportunity so they can manage their overall energy bills. Give the customer the ability as well to dialogue with the utility. If there's special things that the customer wants and the utility hasn't provided them, create an environment where you can talk about these things and have some transparency so that the customer can now have a better voice in decisions that are being made that affect them. So I do agree with you.
Right. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Please, sir. And there's only one rule of asking questions. You actually have to ask a question. All right, sir.
Hello, my name is Kwame Euphoria. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. And I...
I'll start.
Please.
So I wish I had brought another ad with me, but one of the things that T-Mobile did, I guess about a year ago, we actually have ads that we put out there to get more diverse suppliers. And the great thing about these ads, these are actually the suppliers that we use talking about the great relationship with T-Mobile. And so we're constantly trying to recruit. The other piece of this, again, we partnered with the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce, and we've done matchmaking sessions with them. We also did a huge event this past 6 months ago with the Wireless Infrastructure Association, in which we had our whole entire supplier diversity team go to this conference and try to meet with people and do matchmaking. And so our folks are constantly, out there. So I think one of the things I would say is, I can give you our T-Mobile website. I can connect you with the person who is the head of supplier diversity. He was here in DC. And the great thing about him is he'll give you advice on, you know, what to do, how to do a presentation. I mean, they're looking for people, and then, and when you talk about young black nerds, I guess I was one of them too. And I'll tell you, I mean, my dad was an engineer, my mom was a computer scientist. It doesn't get, and I tried to stay away from that. I was like, no. But I mean, one of the things that we've done is with our HR department is they've tried to go to HBCUs and recruit. They also go to the Association of Black MBAs to try to recruit and get more people, you know, interested in the company to apply. So, you know, that's just part of the outreach, you know, that we're doing, because we are looking for talent. And I can tell you for our company, and I can tell you, speak from our CEO, John Ledger, who's pretty different from a lot of CEOs, is he has made a commitment when it comes to diversity. He values it, our company values it. Our employee base is, it's 60% diverse. It's Hispanic, it's Black, it's Asian, but it's predominantly people of color. That's our employee base. And so, you know, that is something that we value, and we are looking, you know, to bring on, you know, more talent, because that's also, you know, that's our employee base too. That's something that we value as a part of our culture.
So let's please connect afterward. I think that there's just going to be these variety of things, and we can't even imagine that, right? Like, so before you had your smartphone, right, we couldn't really think about an Uber, right? So the fact that there are going to be all these new applications, and these applications are going to often be on the local level, so the innovation may not happen in Silicon Valley. It may happen in the place where people are actually living the experience and they see the need for the application. So I think it's all over the place. Some of it's with city government, some of it's with, you know, big companies, right? But I just think it's all over the place. I just met a day or so ago with Black Tech Angel Fund, and those folks are looking, right, for the people who have your background, who have ideas, who are overlooked, right, by other people. And one of the reasons this is so important to all of us is, you know, we love, grew up, and admire and appreciate, you know, Black barbers, other folks are important, right, definitely. But when we talk about capacity and jobs and growth, right, the kind of business you're talking about, that's where growth is going to be in terms of jobs, and so we need that startup concept, right? And just frankly, we can't, I'm from Detroit originally, and you know, just the challenge is, as there is economic development, how can it be equitable development so everybody is at the table and it's not just a kind of a certain class of folks, right, who are a part of that growth. So we see you as a part of that. Just quickly, Joint Center, we're focused on three things: future work, future entrepreneurship, and smart communities as it relates to this space, right? And so I look forward to talking. I also have to just quickly acknowledge my lovely wife, Leslie Overton, just walked in, partner at Austin & Bird, supports a nonprofit person.
Won't you stand up, please, Ms. Overton? Please stand. Please stand. What was that technology called? Kiko?
In putting these out these vehicles, so I'd like you to comment on that yourself.
So I'm not in public policy, but I can speak to this at a high level. So you have different rules, requirements, regulations, policies, everything from the federal, state, local level. State of Michigan just recently passed, the ability for companies to test autonomous vehicles. So there's only certain places around the country that we can test vehicles today. Today we are testing about 50 vehicles, autonomous vehicles in Detroit, Scottsdale, Arizona, and San Francisco. That's going to expand over time. So, it's a kind of a state-by-state, kind of city-by-city fight, if you will, to get people on board with the idea that testing is a good thing. But safe autonomous driving is not ubiquitous. It's not the same thing from all the companies that are doing it. You've got startups, you've got big OEMs, you've got technology companies that are doing this. So to do this in a safe environment, to where people can trust that this vehicle that has no driver or somebody that's touching the wheel is going to be safe within the driving environment. So you got to get in the door in terms of being able to do that. But then once you get into an environment like Detroit, how do you work with the local mayor and the local policymakers to that you can extend that to the local people of color in those areas? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is. My question is this: for all of the momentum behind smart cities and the increased reliance on the Internet of Things, there are those out there that have concerns about cyber attacks, either real or perceived, that may undermine community confidence in moving in that direction. Can you share what's being done to address those cyber attacks and or the fear of them? And then if there's a gap between what is being done and what you think should be done, kind of tell us what your wish list is and where you think either we as a community or some of our elected officials should focus to address those concerns going forward.
So every company does what we call a risk assessment, and as I mentioned, I'm with the electric industry, and we look at our top 10 risks, and obviously a risk, something that has high probability and high consequence, we pay a lot of attention to. So major storms, high probability, high consequence. What is beginning to now fall into that category is cybersecurity. And we're very worried about it. So the more that we digitize, the more that we create opportunities for cyber intrusion. And so in the electric industry, among other things, I spoke earlier about our Storm Mutual Assistance Program, where if there's a big storm, utilities from all across the country come and help another utility to restore service quickly. So we mobilized something called a Cyber Mutual Assistance Team. We have 125 companies, public companies, private utilities, government utilities. We have all the top IT experts who report directly to a CEO. So if we get a cyber occurrence, they all mobilize together and they try to fix it. I want to be careful how I say this. Commissioner Honorable was at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and she presided over a bunch of rules that deal with the large grid, the grid that carries all this electricity. There's a smaller grid called the distribution system. There are rules for the large grid on cybersecurity, but they're not rules for the smaller grid. So the more that we have these distributed sources feeding in, and there are no rules, we run a risk of a potential cyber disruption. I'm not advocating anything, I'm just suggesting. You raise an excellent question. We have to deal with it.
This is exciting, and Gwen, I want to thank you for your service to this country under the former administration, at Homeland Security and at EPA, and just seeing.
We ensure that our communities are adequately protected in the future from a policy perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to make it really quick. I just wanted to make you aware of this. The FCC Chairman Pai just brought back, it's called the Digital Empowerment Task Force. And on that task force, there are members, Mark Morial with the Urban League, Ron Busby with the U.S. Chamber, numerous other stakeholders, public and private. And these are some of the issues that they're bringing up. And I can also tell you, Ron Johnson, who's on there, who's very active at Virginia State, is on there, and he actually does a program with the school, and he's from Petersburg. So I want to bring that to your attention, because issues like this, that's going to be part of what the task force is going to be looking at to give policy recommendations to Chairman Pai.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Mark. Industries, we need to be looking at some of those, but my main question is, can you identify some of those other industries that would greatly be affected, people of color in particular, as we talk about greater automation and automation?
Sure. You touch on the future of work briefly, I can get Senator Parker.
Exactly. So 26% of black folks are concentrated in just 20 jobs that are high risk to automation. So cashiers are big one, drivers, waiters and waitresses, cooks, security guards is another one. So there are, a list of 20 that I'll share some of it tomorrow. I won't do it all, but I'll share some tomorrow. Exactly, and it'll be on the website soon as well, thanks to Morgan.
From Brooklyn, a leader in Albany, the ranking member of the Senate Energy and Telecommunications Committee. We're proud to have New York State Senator Kevin Parker with us for a few times.
Hey, hey, hey.
Good evening, CBC. Good evening to my Congresswoman, my leader, Congresswoman Yvette Clark. Again, thank you very much, not just for your leadership back in Brooklyn, but clearly the things that you're doing here in Washington. All this is critically important, and just thank you very much for including me on this illustrious panel. I think that the amount of information that we're getting is really, really important. I have the dubious job, because right now, at this point in the program, everything has been said, just everybody hasn't said it. And so, as I try to wrap up, I just want to take a quick survey. How many people in here got a survey or called or received a letter asking whether they wanted 5G? That's right, none of us, right? And so the companies decided they were going to do this without any conversations with any of us, right? So be very clear, this is coming, right? They've already decided that it is coming, right? So communities deciding that we don't want this. It's probably, I'm not saying stop people from protesting, because that actually helps us with leverage, right? But we should be, some people on the other side should be negotiating, saying, look, either you're going to negotiate with me to get some stuff that we need in here, or you're going to deal with the folks in here and try to stop you from making it happen. But this thing is coming down the path. We should pay attention to three things. And actually, I'm impressed with this panel because I think all of the comments fell within the parameters of three areas, right? The first one was process. Everybody say process. Process. Right? The second one was participation. Everybody say participation. And the last one was privacy. Everybody say privacy. Privacy. All right. Process, participation, and privacy. One is the process. Is that we have to be clear about what the processes are and the organizations that are engaged in the processes that's going to unfold this Internet of Things, this 5G technology, right? There's bunches of things that have to happen. And I think Marie was right when she said that it's great to have Congresswoman Clark at the table. But unfortunately, Congresswoman Clark cannot sit at every table, right? And there are lots of other tables in which we need to be putting people there. And we need to make sure that all of us are participating in those tables. So we have to look, most of us, like I tell you, in the state of New York, as progressive as we pretend that we are, we don't have one African American on the PSC, on the Public Service Commission. Every single state has a Public Service Commission. And anybody name one commissioner on your Public Service Commission? Right, and they're the ones, and they're, right, and he's probably the only black one on the commission. Yeah, right, at the time, right. And so that's what we're dealing with, right? And so even though being the ranker on energy and telecom, being in Congress, those things aren't necessarily as helpful if you in fact don't have anybody that you're working with on your state public service commission, right? There's also other kinds of state commissions that we have to be paying attention to, like in the state of New York, we have a commission on broadband expansion, right? So I actually sit on that. There's commissions on things like science and technology. I sit on that. So you have to have people sitting on those other tables, and that's just the state level. Each municipality has similar commissions and task force and groups that we need to make sure that we're staffing. And so regardless of who you're, and even the party affiliation of your particular executive on your municipal level, you certainly need to be engaged to make sure that you're monitoring and paying attention to what's happening on these commissions, right? And so this process and understanding the processes in which the T-Mobiles of the world are going through within the context of rolling out these pizza boxes, you need to make sure that you know what's happening and where to get involved. Everybody with me? Yes. Right. So next is participation, and that's been covered more than anything else. And certainly as we talk about things like MWBE, as these new contracts come up, we should be making sure that we're asking for vendor diversity within the context of MWBE programs within the context of contracts that are coming in. Anybody, does that make sense? Yes. Right? So it's not simply just rely on the goodness. This stuff needs to be within the contracts and within what we're actually rolling out, for communities, right? And that means not just for government, but also for the vendors, right? You need to be reaching out, like in the case of New York, to places like Verizon and, our utilities like Con Ed and National Grid, and saying to them, tell me about your vendor diversity. What does it look like? Who are the companies, right? Are the companies spread across different areas, or they're all just pushed into one area, right? And make sure that we're doing that. Also, we have a responsibility in this room that we have to get our community ready for these opportunities. Because when you look at the next best opportunity to create full-time jobs at a living wage with benefits, those opportunities are going to come in the green collar economy and in the expansion of the Internet of Things. Right? And so you've heard, 3 million jobs, people talking about big numbers like, $52 billion just to build out the grid, right? And these are jobs that we can have. And so we have to be working with not just government, but also working with companies and labor unions. Because in many of our states, when we have labor unions that are doing this work, like Local 3 in the state of New York, we need to make sure that our people are being a part of those contracts and getting those apprenticeship programs and other opportunities to create to get access to these jobs. And so the diversity is important, but we have to be engaged in that and be engaged in tough negotiations around making sure that our folks know what kind of jobs that are available and making sure that they get access to the jobs. So we have to build those things into our contracts and into our conversations. And lastly is, although I know everybody's painting a rosy, to be clear, and let me just, again, I love the panelists, but they all making money off of seeing this thing roll out, right? They're not doing their jobs if this thing gets stopped. So but there's some things, particularly as we talk about privacy, again, everybody say privacy, right? So it's one thing to say that you want things to happen automatically, it's another thing to understand everything that's happening automatically, right? Because you're getting good and bad. So for instance, you could monitor gunshots, for instance, the sound of gunshots in a community. And then you can wind up getting certain communities, right? Your insurance rates can go up because they can say, you know what, you aggregated the data, there's more gunshots going on in your community than in other places, and you live there and your car's there, and so now you pay more insurance. When we talk about body cameras, right, do we want to see everything? Right? Police officers roll up into all kinds of things. It's not like cops. It's not like anything. It's not like Hawaii 5-0 and the things that we watch on TV. Right? Cops walk in the middle of all types of crimes. Think about rapes. Think about the abuse of children. Right? A police officer wearing a body camera walks in and sees that. Should that be public? Should that be access to the public? Right? Those are the questions and issues that we have to deal with state by state, municipality by municipality. Right? The aggregation of data around people's health. Right, and again, how that affects things like insurance rates, how that affects job opportunities, or even housing opportunities, right? And so we have to start looking at this aggregation of data and how it's going to be aggregated, and what data is going to be, aggregated, and decide how much access we want everybody to have. So this issue of privacy is absolutely critical, and I think that we should be paying attention to it. Last point as it relates to this is that we really have to work with our municipalities on these deals and know what's happening with these deals, because as you heard, I think in one of the examples about one of the cities, Virginia, Petersburg, it was a bad deal, and that's not uncommon, especially in smaller municipalities, right? And they oftentimes get taken advantage of course not intentionally by the companies. No. But a lot of times we're seeing problems with that, and even in New York City, we're not opposed to that. When we had a broadband deal that we thought was great, and when we looked at the details of it, they were providing a lower rate of spin on broadband in black communities and Latino communities than they were in white communities and downtown communities. So those issues are important. And so there's lots for us to do, but there's a lot of opportunity as well. So I'm looking forward to, as we stand hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, to get the work done that we need to serve our communities. God bless. Thank you.
Before the card, remember that over in the back, that GM and Entertainment Software Association are having some virtual reality master. The Congresswoman start making her way over there. You're gonna be the first one in. And I want y'all commiserate, take some pictures of this panel and this crowd. and then go on Twitter, go to Yvette Clark, E at the end, and hashtag Black Girl Magic, and see exactly what this woman and her wonderful team are doing. Round of applause, Congresswoman, Commissioner, Incredible Panel. We've been doing awesome, awesome audience.